Welcome to my channel. Welcome to Yenge TV. I hope everybody's doing well and you guys are having a good day so far. Today we have with us a guest, and her name is Tierney Sheree. She's a Panafricanist. She's an author. She has a lot of hat on her head, and she's a brilliant woman. I need it, and I wanted to have her so she can explain to us some stuff like propaganda, colonialism, what we need to do, what we have not done yet. So I won't keep this too long. I'm gonna bring her to the channel. So then we're gonna start our show and we're gonna have a good conversation. Hello, Tierney Sheree.
Thank you for having me. Hi, hello, how are you?
Good. How was your weekend and how is your day so far?
Everything's good. I'm having some good time with the family, so I can't complain.
First, thank you for coming, for being here. And it's a tradition in my show. I don't introduce my guests because I really think only the guest can introduce themselves or himself or herself better than me. So can you or may you introduce yourself?
Okay, so for everyone who does not know me, my name's Tierney Sheree. Tierney Sheree Peprah is my entire name. I have the YouTube channel African Aspire TV, where I cover different topics around the African diaspora and on the continent of Africa relating to the anti-colonial struggle. In addition, I'm an attorney by profession. I'm also an author. I wrote my first book earlier this year, Fostering False Identity, how the American child welfare system is designed for social control of the Black family. So those are some of my roles. In addition, I also am an organizer. I organize the organization called We Charge Colonialism. So those are some of my roles. We can get into more.
Wow. I mean, this is just, for starting, but I'm a little bit curious. How did you learn, or how did you become a Pan-Africanist? I mean, how this happen? Because, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so when I was nearing college, I began to, question a lot of things about my surroundings. I began to experience, or I've always experienced being Black in America, but have a more realization of the implications of that. So when you see your city being gentrified, you're seeing the police concentration, you're seeing poverty, and you're seeing all these things that society in America delves to African people, the thing that you're trying to figure out is why. So originally I was just reading different authors. I was reading Ida B. Wells, I was reading Marcus Garvey, and Marcus Garvey was the one that first, I guess, got me to start looking at Africa. And so from there, I think it was like a natural progression. Once you kind of see that the issues plaguing Africans in the United States are really no different than the issues plaguing us on an international level, then you kind of reach the natural conclusion that the only way we'll be able to rid ourselves of this oppression is by uniting with one another and fighting on a collective scale this enemy of global white supremacy. So that's really how I arrived at that conclusion. And from there, I just started learning more and more about the continent and exploring different topics pertaining to anti-colonialism, anti-capitalism, and ultimately what I think will lead to Black liberation.
Black liberation, yes. To me, that's a key word, because it's just my opinion. We are still under control, and we need to seek for that liberation. Yes. And the topic of today, I know we're gonna talk about so many topics, but the main topic is Western propaganda, and if women are being used by Western propaganda. I know men too. I think it's everybody. We all are being used, maybe on different levels, or we participate in it consciously or unconsciously, actively or passively. So can you tell me something about it? What's your take on it about that propaganda?
Like you said, I think it's not necessarily, it's not a Black woman or African woman issue. It's really who's the most opportune to put the people to silence whenever you're trying to bring up the oppression of the global colonial system. Right now, I think Black women are just being used at this moment, but I'm sure we've all seen Black men being used at different times throughout our history, also to pacify the resistance of our people. So it's, I would say is that when you look at what's going on with, I mean, it didn't start with Kamala Harris, but before her, I feel like it was Stacey Abrams, and I'm talking particularly about in the US, different African women who become the face of the Democratic Party, become the face of what we have to aspire to. And all of these people have very much complicated legacies. I would say that their allegiances are not to the liberation of our people, particularly on a global level. That's something that we also have to be careful with, is that I think us in our different places inside of our African countries, we get so focused on what's happening with us that we're not thinking about the implications for our neighbors, the implications for our people abroad. And when you look at people who are put inside of the position of being the spokesperson for the imperialist machine, those people are complicit in genocide, they're complicit in colonialism, they're complicit in the attacks on African people. So like you said, it's very much something that has gone on for a long time. It's being revamped, particularly acting like the quintessential thing for Black people is for Black women to be the face of everything. Black women to be the face of institutions that are harming Black people, women, men, and children. That is the thing that we're told to aspire to. So obviously this is a trick from the oppressor to make us think that we have a stake inside of something that we have no stake in. So I'm pretty sure that, you know, all of us have had this experience. Many of us have had these thoughts, and, you know, it's not something new, but it's something that has to be called out.
Yes, yes. And yes, you said it right. I mean, yeah, it's been like that, like this for a long time. And maybe even though right now we see a lot of women being on the front line. What's the two on the WTO with that lady who's ruling the WTO right now? And I was surprised when she got there and Black people start dancing and being happy. I'm like, oh, what's wrong with my people? If she's up there, that means she's one of the puppets.
That was very it's disappointing it was disappointing when I saw it too. It's surprising at this point, because I've just seen over and over again, we are so happy for positions inside of colonial institutions. And the WTO, that's one of the chief mechanisms by the colonial structure to ensure that African countries remain inside of a position of being dominated by the West. The WTO, the IMF, the World Bank rather, all of these institutions work collaboratively to enforce the neo-colonial situation. So the irony is almost like, if you can imagine whatever country that you've been colonized in, imagine like active colonialism, and they assign an overseer inside of the colonial system, and all the Africans are happy because it's a Black woman. That would be nonsensical, yet that's literally what we've been taught to do. So it really shows the level of propaganda that has really bled into our minds. We're still enslaved, obviously, mentally, because we cheer for our oppressor when they're oppressing us. We cheer for them, and we don't have enough self-worth to believe that we're worth being treated with dignity, that we're worth having sovereignty and self-determination. We don't have that love of ourselves to actually see through some of these mechanisms that are being used to silence us.
Yes, yes. And what is, I mean, based on your research or based on your comprehension about this, what is the best way to move forward and achieve or rise up?
I think that we have to do an in-depth analysis. African people have to do an in-depth analysis of our current situation. that completely examines the capitalist system, completely examines how it manifests inside of the different places where we live. And I think we have to do so with the mindset that anything that is bad for our people has to go. Anything. Even if it's good for some of our people, if it's not good for our people collectively, it has to go. That's something very radical, because we've been taught to look for things that are only going to benefit a certain class of our people, a certain group of our people. Meanwhile, the masses of our people remain in despair. But when you're saying, no, we need something that is going to collectively help Africans, because I think if we think about how horrible it is that Africa is the richest continent in the world, when you look at the mineral wealth, and then you have countries in Africa that, like the Congo, that are booming with mineral wealth. And all of these regions are just so poor when you look at the conditions of the people. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for the West to still own the corporations that they owned inside of our countries under colonial rule, and for them to now have free access to come in and out and in and out for their benefit. And they get to put this label on it and say, hey, it's free trade. We're trying to help you. We're trying to help you develop. You're trying to help me develop by taking money out of my country, getting free resources at very low cost. Meanwhile, the people are getting paid cents a day. It's nonsensical. This is the horrible logic that colonialism has really taught us, and we've adopted it because we're not thinking analytically. We're not willing to sit at a table and actually look at these policies. They've been saying so much, oh, this is going to be good for you. This is going to help you. This is going to get your economy going. Many of us don't even think, does our economy going in Africa mean the same thing in Europe? Because I hear a lot of people talking about different countries in Africa. Oh, this country's more stable. This country's more economically better. And it's really not the situation that the masses of the people are experiencing something good. It's just a certain pocket of people. And then, of course, the European investors who get to come into this country and invest business-wise, but that money doesn't reach the people. So we have to have a real conversation. Do we want an economy that only is going to benefit certain people? Meanwhile, all of our people, like 90%, are living in slums. Think about a country like Ghana. Everyone loves Ghana. Everyone talks about how wonderful Ghana is, right? I love Ghana too. That's the only country so far I've been to on the continent. My husband's Ghanaian, and we plan to live there some point. As much as I love it, Ghana has beautiful things, but 50% of the people in Ghana are in poverty. 50%. And the rest, who aren't the rich class, they're struggling. Is that the economy that we want when people talk about how great this system is? It's working in Ghana. If it's not working in a way that most of the people are being fed, clearly it's not working. So that's what I think it's going to take. We have to rid ourselves of this idea that what's good for the West, what's good for Europe, the economies that they say are great, and therefore it's going to be great for you. We have to question that logic and understand that they're only telling us these things because they want to continue to hold power inside of our countries, among our people. That's the only reason why they're telling us that lie over and over again.
Yes. And yes, you're right about that. I agree with you. Sheree, maybe you might teach me something today. When me personally, I'll start with Pan-Africanism. Until today, what I keep hearing is Pan-Africanists are just dreamers. What else? We don't have an economic agenda. Like what Pan-African said about economy, there's nothing. And I'm like, okay, maybe you have not read maybe Amos Wilson with the book Black Power. So what's your take on it?
I think Pan-Africanism is broad. We have to acknowledge that. So I have people who I'm real cool with, in the struggle, who say they're Pan-Africanists, but their Pan-Africanism, they mean the same thing as far as Africans coming together and fighting the oppressor, but their methodology is very different than mine. I am a Pan-Africanist, but I'm also a socialist. I believe that the only way for us to truly have freedom from this global system is for us to ensure that every single African person in our society is taken care of. To me, there's no other way to live whenever you're talking about going back to your original African heritage. If you know anything about how societies ran prior to experiencing the colonial governments, they ran collectively. It was about collectivism. It was about communalism. So to me, that has to be on the table. I'm not interested in, I mean, I'll be releasing a video probably tomorrow. I'm not interested in a situation where Akon says, oh, I love Africa, everyone come to Africa, but he's in Africa making business deals that are hurtful to the people.
Business deals with who?
Yes, exactly. But this is Pan-Africanism because Akon, my understanding, he was born in America. He's Senegalese, and he goes back to Africa. That's Pan-Africanism. And he's going to other places in Africa. He's going to South Africa. That's Pan-Africanism. He's going to the Congo, and he's starting to trade inside of the cobalt mines that are horrendous. That's Pan-Africanism. Now there's reports coming out that he's going to Uganda to start another Akon city over there. That's Pan-Africanism. So, there has to me, it's Pan-Africanism can be flowery. I notice a lot of people in our communities were more concerned with the glory days. We're concerned with quoting all day. I see it on my timeline all day. I hear Thomas Sankara quotes, I hear Nkrumah quotes, Malcolm quotes, and pictures of these people and speeches. And I love these people very much as well. I love them very much. They're obviously the people who brought us into the ideology. But I think that our ancestors would be more interested in us continuing their legacy, not by posting your quotes or videos, but by actually doing the work. What are you doing that looks like what Nkrumah did when he was dethroned? What are you doing that looks like what Sankara did? What are you doing? If you're not organizing with your people, if you're not coming together and trying to fight this thing on a collective scale, then you're not continuing their legacy, in my opinion. You might continue spreading their words, but you're not actively engaging in a way that you're furthering what their purpose was. And unfortunately, I do see a lot of us, we fall into this glorious, this is what they talked about. This is what the freedom struggles were. But we have to be engaged with those things today and not look at those things in the past as where it all ended.
Yes, I agree with you. It gave me the impression, maybe I'm wrong, that we were more engaged when we were under duress. Because we could see the gun pointing at us. Today we don't see the gun pointing at us, but we know there's a hand somewhere, hidden hand controlling things. Yeah. Maybe that's what makes us sleeping right now.
I agree with that assessment. So I think the thing that we have to look at is how the colonial system, and by the colonial system, I'm also talking about the system in the United States as it pertains to Africans in America, because I look at all of this as a part of the same system. How the colonial system evolves whenever it's met with a threat. And the way that it evolves is trying to find ways to pacify resistance. So I'll use the United States first as an example. When you've seen in the 60s, you've seen people struggling, you've seen people going out on the streets, you've seen the Black Panther Party getting armed and saying, we're going to actually make sure that we're on the streets patrolling our own neighborhoods. You've seen so many movements. And the response was, well, let's get a bill passed that's going to deal with none of the issues that people are feeling, not deal with the police presence in the neighborhoods, not deal with the economic situation, but we're going to give them a concession bill that's going to say, hey, we're going to give you guys protections at the voting booth. We're going to give you guys protections in the housing market, protections. If you look at that, how that actually slowly deteriorated our ability to mobilize, because a lot of people no longer felt, like you said, that they were under duress. Similarly, whenever you look at the colonial situation in Africa and other countries throughout the diaspora, what happened whenever we had outward colonialism? Whenever you had the British Empire, the French Empire, all of these empires that their stance towards our people was not confused. We knew that these were the oppressor. We knew that they had a active governing structure over African people. So it was clear, you know, we had an identifiable oppressor. What do you do when you have an identifiable oppressor? You struggle against them. But if you look at today, the conditions of our people then versus today, the conditions are the same, but the duress is not there because the oppressor is no longer identifiable. Instead, we have these African puppets who are put in place to look like they're the oppressor, but we're not made to think about the people who are funding these governments, the people who are making business deals behind the scenes that we might never see these people. They own Fortune 500 companies, they own mines, they own all these things. We don't see them. So because we don't see them, a lot of our people were not able to organize the same way as we would if we were to see and actively that people were coming into Africa with guns blazing and trying to take over and say, hey, we're here to oppress you. You know, the reaction is just different at this point.
So yes, the reaction is different. And we can see that even, you know, in some African countries, like, I know, most of them now, it's more about China, fighting China.
Yeah.
Forgetting that, I mean, America is involved too. Like UK is involved too, or France is involved too. So, and sometimes I think that's the work they do. They put China in front. So beat up China, get focused on China. You don't see us, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So here's the thing, like when we think about China, I am of the belief that yes, the Chinese have been problematic in many places throughout Africa. That's just a fact. But if you look at what they're doing, they're benefiting in some ways from the system that is controlled by the West. So exactly. The system was created by the West. The system is upheld by the West. They're the one that have the military presence. They're the ones who have their business people over there having ownership of different African things. So the system's already created. And people get upset at now that I think honestly that we're so conditioned to be used to seeing white people do this, that when you see the Asians now get in on what the white people have been doing, our reaction is, wait, what are you doing? Like, we're not used to you being here. We're used to white people doing this. So I think honestly, a lot of it is that when we see exploitation happening from people who we're not used to, we feel threatened, like you're also supposed to be down here with us. To me, if you're upset about the issues that happen whenever China goes to Africa, you have to be upset at the system that allows not just them, but the United States and Europe. What's happening a lot of times today is that the US and the European countries are using China as a propaganda machine. You heard Donald Trump's administration talking about how China is a problem for Africa. Just let that resonate. What makes you think that Donald Trump cares about Africa? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Biden's saying, oh, China, we have to make sure that they're put in their place. What makes you think that these people care? They don't. They are threatened by their presence. That's really all it is. So we do have to be careful. Yes, if they're doing wrong, absolutely identify it. Let's get rid of it. But let's do it with the understanding that it's not an individual actor. We're concerned with the system that allows all these people the benefit of coming into Africa and exploiting from Africa and taking from Africa.
Yes. And you talk about Trump, and that's also it just crossed my mind about Biden, because last year during the election, I've seen so many of us, supporting Biden, saying, okay, he's better than Trump. He lacks he's not reckless. He's not gonna attack Africa, or yeah. I'm like, okay. I don't get it. I mean,
and unfortunately, it's kind of like we spoke. I'm sorry.
To me, it's just more Polish.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's what I was going to say. To me, it's kind of like we were talking about. We don't deal good with people who are outward with their intentions. We prefer you to lie to us to our face and do the same thing rather than be outward about doing the same thing. So when Donald Trump gets on TV I think he's in a meeting and says out loud, oh, these shithole countries in Africa, that is more offensive than Biden's policies that treat Africa like it's a shithole, so it's really unfortunate, but this is the reality of our people. And that's why people who are more polished are able to get away with a lot, because they've realized that we get triggered by the outward racism. If you look at Joe Biden's alliances, particularly when he was coming up, I don't think anyone with a reasonable mind would say that has any more affinity for the Black community. This man authored the 1994 crime bills that caused millions of Africans to be inside of the prison industrial complex still today. So if you're looking at that person and saying, oh, this person's better for us, you have to understand this person might speak better, but their intentions are the same. And that's what we have to be concerned with. What are you doing? I'm not concerned with what anyone says. I'm really concerned with what you do. Personally, I kind of prefer in some ways whenever people are outward about their intentions, rather when they're hidden, because unfortunately our people aren't able to organize the same because of what we spoke about under a Joe Biden versus under a Donald Trump, or under a Donald Trump versus a Barack Obama. Because again, we're not feeling the need to organize. And already I've seen like the decreased reaction to what the president does just among our people.
Yes, you're right. And you said a key word, organize. Mm-hmm. And this remind me the great Kwame, it was Kwame Ture.
Yes.
Who said there's a difference between mobilizing and organizing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. I mean, I think right now, when you look at the movements that are going on now, they're basically mobilization efforts. In fact, we've seen in America a lot of criticism against the Black Lives Matter movement, because we're realizing that a lot of people have profited over going into different destinations and mobilizing the people. But whenever the news coverage is no longer looking on the ground to see what's happening in that particular location, those people go to where the next story is. Meanwhile, the communities are left in the same condition that they are in. So they need organizers, not mobilizers. They need people who are building infrastructure, building institutions, building social movements. That's the important thing on the ground. Yes. There are people there on the ground, but of course, the people who get funded and the people who receive the most substance are the people who oftentimes are selected by the media to come in and go out. These are the people who are going to get all the support. So it's a real issue with our people. We have to learn to not be driven by our emotions. Just look at, if anyone's watching, this young brother, Dante, and I forget his last name, who was just murdered by the cops. It's just happening over and over again. We're being driven by our emotions. You should have been consistently thinking about that system that existed since Philando Castile was killed. Why is it that Philando Castile, okay, things died down. George Floyd, okay, things died down. And now you have this young 20-year-old who's killed by the police, and now it comes up again. Organizing is very different from mobilizing. Organizing is saying we have a systemic issue and we have to deal with that. And the thing that I feel like a lot of local organizers also have to improve on is not getting boggled down into this being a local issue, but understand that this is a national issue, and that this is a national issue that's a part of an international issue, because I don't look at policing in the United States as any different than the military occupation of African countries abroad.
Yes. Yes, and you said it right, and I like it. You wrote a book. I ordered it. I don't have it yet.
That's okay.
And you talk about fostering and the welfare system, right?
Yes.
If we stay just here in America, do you think that's where the division started? With that system? Because I know President Johnson maybe started something, Reagan came and he just put us apart. Bill Clinton came with the crime bill.
So
I'm trying to understand right now why we cannot really get together and really fight together.
Yeah. That's what I advocate for in the book. So it's interesting. Whenever I talk to my brothers and sisters like you from the continent, that when I talk to them about the child welfare system and just how horrible it is, it's like, wow, like, why is this system even in existence? Because when you talk to people from the continent, it's like, if our child is in trouble, we don't have people come and take them to a social service agency. You have a relative who can step in and take the place. Unfortunately, in America, our families have been so destroyed, and in other Western countries also, where African people have been taken to, you see that our family structure has been so destroyed by centuries and centuries of state policies that really